these are all of my battery chargers. These ones charge the smaller 12-volt batteries, and these ones charge the more ordinary 18-volt batteries. What I'd like to do is build a rack for these chargers so that I can get them up off the bench and have them all mounted on the wall. This is 1/8" cold rolled sheet metal. My thinking is that I'll attach the battery chargers to this sheet metal and figure out some way to hide the cables and all of that behind.
One way that I've discovered for getting straight lines using an angle grinder is to just set up a little guide, something that you can cut against, and it gives you really clean cuts.
This piece was left over from my welder carts that I built a while back. Now I have 4 chargers that take these larger drill batteries, and 3 of them are exactly the same by dimension, and 1 of them is a little different. So what I'm gonna do is use this sheet metal to make these shelves that will actually fit exactly to these battery chargers. So 1 for this 1 dimension, and 3 at this larger dimension.
Since these pieces actually have some detail to them, they're not just straight lines all the way around, I just cut them freehand with the angle grinder, and it worked out pretty good. Here I'm cutting the pieces that are going to be the frame and are going to wrap around the sheet metal that I previously cut. In a previous project I showed square tubing that had a slit cut into it so that the sheet metal would fit inside the square tubing, but I didn't show how that was actually done. And this is the way that I do it. I lay the square tubing flat on the table, and then I slide the angle grinder back and forth so that it makes a nice parallel cut all the way down the length of the tubing. Even though this blade is only a 1/16 inch thick and my material is an 1/8 inch thick that I'm going to be sliding into it, the tubing does have some internal tensions that cause it to pop open a little bit and gives me that 1/8 inch that I'm looking for. Now all that's left for me to do is tack the corners, square it up, and then weld it out. Here I'm drawing the lines that will be the center for the shelves that I previously made, and the center of the smaller battery chargers that are not going to be sitting on shelves, but that are going to be directly attached to this sheet metal. This part's pretty straightforward. I'm just tacking the shelves in the middle and then squaring them up and putting a small stitch on either side. And really not much welding is needed right here. I actually goofed on one of the measurements and had to grind 2 of these shelves off, and having the weld almost ground completely out, it wasn't necessarily easy just to break that shelf off. It always surprises me how strong welding can be. Okay, the power cord for each charger is going to wrap around the back of each one and be fed behind so that all the cords can be hidden behind the unit. So this hole that I'm drilling has to be not only big enough for the actual wire, but also for the plug to be able to fit through. So the power cables will wrap around the back of each charger, and I'm fixing them to the backside with a dab of silicone. I don't really want the battery chargers to be plugged in all the time, so I'm adding a master power switch so I can cut the power when they're not in use. The hole saw that I used was slightly undersized, so So using this Tootsie Roll and a router, just open that hole up a little bit and it fit in there beautifully. So I'm not going to be bolting the battery chargers to these individual shelves. I'm actually going to be gluing them on. And ordinarily I would like to use silicone, but since I don't want to wait for it to dry, I'm going to use hot glue. The hot glue is going to be completely adequate for holding these battery chargers down, but not so strong that I couldn't get them off if I needed to replace one of them. You can see how strong the hot glue is. I'm able to shake the whole table by tugging back and forth on the battery charger. This power strip has a plug that is just perfect for what I need. You can rotate it any which way you need. Right here you can see my concentrating face. So wiring up the unit is pretty straightforward. These battery chargers don't use a ground, but since I have a ground available to me, I'm grounding the sheet metal. All of the neutrals get tied together and one neutral goes back to the switch because the switch is lighted, meaning that I'm able to see whether I have power at the switch just by looking at it. Then the power supply comes in and connects on one side of the switch, and the load side comes off to supply this little mini power strip that I've made. A trick that I recently discovered for inserting these wedge anchors is to just use the force of the hammer drill to drive them in. My hammer drill has a setting where I can turn the rotation off and it just pecks like a chipping hammer. So using that feature, I drive in these wedge anchors instead of trying to get in there with a hammer. I have a goal of organizing my shop in such a way that everything has a place. And if everything is in its place, nothing will be on the tops of the workbenches. All of the work surfaces will be completely cleared. This project brings me one step closer to that goal.